Welcome back, everyone, to Moving Offline. Today we have Eli Samuel. We are really excited to talk with him. He has a company where he dedicates his time to create solutions for people that want a simpler life or a life that is not so consumed by big tech, a life that is on your own terms and that is safe, something that allows you to think, this is something that I really want to partake of. This application is something that I really want to do. And I'm really excited to have him to discuss a little bit more about the philosophy and why he doesn't have some apps available on his store for the general public. So Eli, thank you very much for being with us. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is KosherOS?
Sure. Okay. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. We've been in touch for quite a while, and it's a real honor to be on the podcast. Okay. So a little bit about me. I've a very interesting founder story. I was in rabbinical school to study to be a rabbi. And the school I was in was always trying to be on the cutting edge of tech. One day they said, smartphones were just coming out in those days. And they said, we need to be on top of what's going on in the school. And we have to make sure that we're not allowing outside influences that are antithetical to our sympathies, basically, to be just roaming around in the school. So they said, best option on the table right now is let's get iPhone parental controls. So I was one of the guys on the committee to put the PIN numbers in for the parental controls. I was not an Apple guy. I'm still not an Apple guy, but I did it. And shortly thereafter, we realized, and this is something that comes up for quite a while, for many years rather, the parental controls were not working the way that they were intended to. So we put on the controls. The toggle a few months later became broken, I would say. So that even if the parental controls were set, there weren't really any parental controls. It became an open secret in the school that the school became aware of it finally. And there was no recourse, basically, from Apple. I remember getting on a call with tech support when iPhone user put me on, and the woman just didn't know how to help us. And she says, I'll file a report. It took many iOS updates later to fix what we were doing. And the school suffered as a result. I said, there has to be a better way. I looked into solutions. I'm like, you know what? There's a concept that I had seen of custom Android systems. I said, well, if we can make it for security and if we can make it for aesthetics and whatever everyone else is making it for, all the hobbyists, let's turn this into a kosher operating system for phones. That was about close to 10 years ago at this point. And as they say, the rest is history. We've been iterating on the product ever since. Started out small in the school community. The school is part of a network of schools across the US. So we spread throughout those schools. And now we are in a few countries, many of the Jewish communities, and beyond, where we are expanding into the broader market of devices that are protected, secure on the OS level without relying on any external filters.
Yeah. So something that is really interesting is that you're coming from a studying, right? You're doing your rabbinical school, and there are some religious principles to be derived out of that. A lot of people may not agree with every religious principle, but I think most people have come to recognize that their tech usage is getting out of control. And you mentioned parental controls there. Since then, Apple has also introduced other areas of quote unquote perceived control as screen time, right? You can set it up, but we all know about that notification that pops up and says, give me more time. Why do you think that it is not designed with people in mind and it is so easily overridden, right? So I can just grab my iPhone, set it up, and once it asks me, do you want more time? I'm going to say, yes, I want more time. Why is it not hard locked like you guys are actually producing a device that is hardened completely and that respects that this is the intention? We're just going to move forward with this.
So we can get into a whole big tech discussion on this, but there's the first thing that always strikes in my mind is that there's a lot of financial incentive over here, and kids are a consumer of without picking on Apple specifically, but they're a consumer of tech devices, and there are dollar signs there for, for any company to pick up. So yes, we want to give the right answers to parents and tell them that we're doing the right thing. And yet there's a lot of incentive to provide more and capture the customer in a sense. I think also there's a lot of talk, a lot of buzz lately about legislation and stuff like that. And they're always hauling big tech companies in front of Congress. A lot of people leading in government remind me of my parents. They're older. They might need help connecting a printer. That's a general rule. And, if someone can come up in front, give testimony in front of Congress and say, oh, we're doing something about it. And here, we'll even show you screenshots or tell you our policies, even if practically they're not as effective as they are presented, but still, the at least on the legislation side, the decision makers are not either getting the full picture or are not processing the full picture to the best extent. So I think that's two prongs, really. There's a lot of financial incentive, and there's also the oversight. The governmental oversight is just not there.
And something that you mentioned is that you're building kosher, right? So KosherOS, people probably within the religious community, or if you have ever interacted with any text from the Bible, right, you may know what that means. But for those people that may be listening and they're like, kosher, I mean, I thought that was related to meat. That's the only thing that I'm associating it with. Can you explain a little bit more? How does it transfer from that ancient wisdom tradition to the tech side of things?
Right. There's a joke within our community sometimes that when we meet someone who doesn't really know kosher and they think that the rabbi took the cow and blessed it. And that was it. I mean, kosher, the translation basically means prepared. There's special ways to prepare food, ritual slaughter and stuff like that. And it's a preparation. It's a way of making sure that anything enters our body, but even on the food side of things, anything that enters our body is done in a way that's in accordance with our laws and our sensitivities. That translates very well. We actually don't have a rabbi blessing the phones or the tablets. And that's our way of saying kosher in tech means is that something that was thought through and is intentional. And obviously, we have a rabbinical council on the Jewish side of things, but just in general, the fact that we have, what are you not just putting your body in this sense, but what are you putting in front of your eyes, in your mind? How are you exposed to technology? Yeah, right. Kosher has a certain religious connotation, but ultimately I like to promote it as, no, this is just a way of being intentional about what you put in front of yourself, your kids, anyone who could benefit from a little less tech. Still, I want to emphasize this. I like the fact that we can provide high tech. And we're providing cutting edge devices and cutting edge tech, not just on our protections or our restrictions, however you want to view it, but also in what we're delivering as far as the apps and the resources, the services that we're delivering. And that's, part of the same thing. Kosher food there's no requirement that it has to be a certain way or anything like that. There's high-end kosher food, there's kosher fast food, there's everything in between. Tech is the same way. It's intentional, it's mindful, and yet you don't have to, the way I always put it, you don't have to suffer for it. But it's let's keep things modern, but let's keep it intentional.
Once you mentioned there that you're still providing a certain level of technological advancement, the thought that came into my mind and that maybe somebody's having as they are approaching this topic of digital minimalism is, why have restrictions at all? Right. So in Jewish kind of life, there are some foods that even if you were to prepare them in a positive way are still prohibited. I think of like shellfish or pork, they're definitely frowned upon in those communities because they themselves, out of themselves, may not be the best for your body. Right. But somebody may come and say, well, I want to eat shellfish, I want to eat pork. Why have this restriction? And why to try to jump through so many hoops and ideas and creating this software? For what? It's the same thing. It's self-control. It's my decision. So what do you have to say? What have you seen with people that have adopted this different system into maybe a more basic understanding of their smartphone, restricted, whichever we want to call it? What are some of the stories that you have seen that are helpful still? And what would you say to somebody that says, well, I don't need any restrictions, I don't want him in my life, why should we have them?
The first thing I always say is, if someone doesn't want to be helped, you can't help them. But that being said, there are, and this is something, I learned at Rabbinical College, that people are always looking for ways to better themselves and better the world. And yet, part of the human condition is that we're not always up for the challenge. And I think there's a famous saying that see if I get it right, locks were made to keep honest people honest. They weren't made to keep thieves out. And with everything that we do in life, for people who are looking to better themselves and better their communities and better their surroundings are always looking, what can I do to improve? And in tech, that translates very well to what we're doing here. How can I encourage myself to improve? And we always have times of temptation. We always have weaker points in life, and we always have stronger points in life. But when someone's ready to make a decision and say, this is a positive change that I want to make in my life, that's where tech like this, us at Safe Telecom, KosherOS, and other companies are doing in the similar space. When someone makes that decision they're ready to do it, we're here to support your journey. That's really what it is. So you asked for a story. I have a great story I always say over. I was once at a conference. It was a Jewish day school conference. We had a booth over there, and a woman came running over. She says, I just want to let you know that I bought one of your phones. It came a recommendation. Her relative runs an organization out in Jersey that helps people adopt healthier tech choices. So she said, I got a phone through him. She happens to live in the Midwest. She said, you changed my life. I was putting my kids to sleep every night and shopping on Target on my phone. That's when she had time, that's when she felt she had time to shop at Target. And she said it was ruining, obviously, her relationship with her kids, and she couldn't help it. So she knew she had to make a change. And at a certain point of strength, she said, this is the time, let me do it. And she came running to me. She said, I have a booth to man, because she was also a vendor at the same conference. But she said, I just wanted to thank you. The tech that she adopted from us was helping her maintain something that she knew was the right thing to do. She wanted to, she's a loving mother. She wanted to put her kids to bed without shopping. And she couldn't do that at certain points because it was overwhelming. The tech was in her pocket, in her face. So that's really where we would step in and say, okay, you're right. We're not here to restrict anyone who doesn't want to be restricted, but we're here to support anyone who wants to take that journey to be helped and to improve things that they know deep down. She obviously knew that this is the right thing to do. So I made a joke with her afterwards and said, my wife also adopted one of our phones. And you'd think that she stopped shopping at Target so often, but she still figured out how to ring up the bill.
That's really funny because it just shows that some habits are hard to break, number one. But one thing that I see in your Safe Telecom website, right? Like, if somebody were to go and get one of your Pixel devices that is configured to only have certain apps, is that you guys have a lot of apps. We're talking about 600 apps on the premium version. And I'm kind of curious as to understand the philosophy behind of how you do it, how you kind of look into an app and you say, well, this is allowed and this is not allowed, or what makes the cut, what doesn't make the cut, because everybody has their pet app, their thing that they cannot live without because of convenience. So if I say, well, you don't have mine, can you approve it? What are some of the philosophical underpinnings that you consider as you are looking into, hey, this is what we want in our phone, this is what we want to provide?
Okay, that's actually a very good question. And this is something that comes up daily, where we're talking now with our customer service team to see how we address questions. We're going through an internal review to see, the top questions. And this is one of the top questions. Can you add X app to the platform? So just to pull it back for a second, the platform was designed not to have browsing, open web browsing. That was the first primary thing, because that's always a portal to getting involved in things that are not always the best, those parts of the internet. So we ship without a browser. When you turn on the phone, there's an app store. It's our own custom app store. It's not the Google Play Store. And there's a curated selection of apps. As you mentioned, we have up to 600 apps. Part of what we're doing here is also trying to allow people to make that decision for what they want, for lack of a better word, exposure to. So some people just need a calendar or a calculator, maybe Waze for navigation, or Google Maps, or the parking meter app, real, serious productivity apps. Some of our more religious customers want to listen to Torah Bible classes. So we have those available for them. And there are some people who say, I need to work. I have a lot of different things. So we classify the apps first and foremost by basic, a plus, and a premium level. And that's category based. So any of the essential tools we would keep like in a basic category. I always call the fan favorites, what people would graduate to a smartphone for. So we want to keep them graduated to a smartphone and yet have that conscious decision. I don't want to get stuck on the Google Play Store installing hundreds, if not thousands of apps. So that's where we begin. The main aim, just on the technical side of the platform, is that even within the apps, there's no browsing. So I know lots of platforms struggle with this. We have some unique proprietary technology that we put in place so that even if you're on let's say your Chase banking app, you won't connect to travel rewards website from Chase. And you won't be able to, then start searching for vacation packages and get to google.com and then, do whatever you want. So that's more of the overview and the technical considerations for the platform. If an app has browsing, we take a look at it and we see, is it something that we can solve? Is it something that we can restrict? We have put in apps that are restricted. We won't put an app in if it has browsing. That's number one. I think, that's this huge philosophy for us. And we'd rather get back to a customer and say, you came to us to trust us with a device that is either kosher or safe protected. That's what we're here for. So you're kind of entrusting us to do that. And there would be a breach of that trust to give you an app that would compromise on that. That being said, we've managed to put in 600 apps that do lots of different things. There have been apps that we've taken back to our rabbinical board or to our guidance. We also have some lay guidance as well, depending on what the app makes available. There are some shopping apps that we won't put in because of the either images that are not up to the sensitivities of some of our customers. Now, I will emphasize we do custom app stores for different organizations and for different schools and different communities. So the primary, that's why I spend time explaining that the core is browser free, and that's our strength. That's where we shine. And yet if a school comes to us and says we have different requirements, depending if we could release it under the Safe Telecom name, we'll do that, or the KosherOS name in this case. We have an effort going on with a different group that has very special requirements, and we're building out based on our platform. We're building out the same security, the same protections, and yet a different set of apps for them because that's what they're looking for. That's going under a different brand. That's not within the same KosherOS brand, but that's the kind of like, I wanted to build a robust platform that can service many different people and many different sensitivities. So on the kosher side, we're doing things. If there's a rabbinical question, we'll ask a rabbinical question. If there's a lay question, we'll ask a lay question. We want also to have apps that work. I know there was one app that we had that had the Google Play billing system. It required it and it would crash on startup. And even though it was a popular app, we couldn't add it. It just wouldn't work. And we're not here to answer I don't want my customer service team fighting for themselves over there, responding to every single customer that wants that. So that's really the the overview with a little bit more of the specifics of what we're looking to do. I don't like injecting too much on the we feel this way or imposing, from I don't like to wield religion like that. And that's not what we're trying to do. So it's, again, to give a safe, secure, protected environment within the general product and also within the organizations and institutions that we work with, the schools that we work with to provide.
And what I understood from what you're saying is that you are willing to work with other people. Maybe you're not releasing under your brand, but you want to provide that guidance, that expertise that you have been able to learn from a lot of years of experience, 10 years of building and iterating on this platform, and say, well, if you really want that because your sensitivities or your preferences are just different, we can work with it. We cannot release it under our name, but we can provide it for your organization. Like, let's say it's, I don't know, a tech company, and they're like, hey, we just want our phones for our tech company to not have this distraction. And, we just want to eliminate this browsing distraction or this whatever rated content it is that, it's out there. We want to have a better environment. I think that's what I hear from you. But the main principle is browser free. And I can understand that because it can be a rabbit hole to so many different things and just wasting time in general, right? As we start wrapping up, one thing that I kind of have in the back of my head is, well, so how have you seen your personal life being impacted by providing these services, right? You're in the tech space, you're creating some of these things, but what motivates you to become better in your personal kind of like, not replying to the customer service over Thanksgiving dinner or over the holidays or whatnot? What have you learned in these past 10 years about yourself, and what are you battling still in this tech-centric world?
So it's a very, very good question. One thing is, running a tech company means that I have to be involved in tech as often as requires, which is quite often. So, I envy some of the customers that come to us. We have a custom build flip phone. We do, so I'm like, hey, there have been times I'm like, why don't I try that? And yet in the end of the day, because I'm running this business, this company, it's more difficult, obviously, to do something like that. I think anyone in this space becomes more mindful inherently about what the dangers are, either for themselves or for their kids. I have young kids. My oldest is 7 now. The stories that I hear from parents who are looking for solutions, some are at their wits' end looking for solutions. The parenting challenges, it's 2024. Everyone runs into it. I don't care what demographic you are, religious, not religious, age, anything. There's no factor that would shield anyone right now, even in the most insular communities. Technology affects us all. I think that's something that I'm actually very grateful that I have an insight in that I wouldn't have had without being here. And we would have probably, when my oldest daughter turned into a teenager and all her friends have devices, we would have had to deal with that without having the tools necessarily to deal with it. So I'm very grateful to be able to have that insight into this world. Part of what I learned in school is that we have to give back to the world. We're here on a mission. Everyone's here on a mission. And whatever life is sometimes seems haphazard, but it's not. We're all put in the right place, the right time, the right situation. Like I said, I was studying to be a rabbi. I did not get my ordination. I did this instead. And the ability to give back to the world in a unique way. I still call it a niche market. There's lots of buzz, as you know. It's growing. A lot of people are interested and they're getting involved, whether it's, again, parents, professionals, you name it, runs the gamut. I feel extremely fortunate that I was put in this position. We'll call it intentionally or unintentionally. I stumbled into it, and to do that, to give back and to really make a difference with what we're putting out. The software makes a difference. I mean, we hear the stories, I'm sure you've heard lots of stories from people. I hear lots of stories from people. I speak to people in the industry, all great people building for the next generation. and for future generations, all future generations. I think that's really cool to be part of it and to be able to contribute what little parts, myself personally and my company is doing.
So I always like to leave our guests with the final word, and I wanted to encourage you to also tell us, how can we find you? How can we find the company? If people want to partner, learn more about the work that you have been doing for the past 10 years. And yeah, so what would you like to say besides those, things to the audience that they can think about and take home this holidays to reflect on their tech use and their future with tech in 2025?
Right. As you mentioned, it's the holiday season. People are more at home, but they're more with devices potentially. They're not running off to work. They're not running off to school. It's a time really, without sounding too generic, but it's a time to be with family. And I remember holidays with my family when I was younger. I remember the days before the flip phones without dating myself here. It's super special. And the memories that we made in those times and we continue to make in those times, they're irreplaceable. And being mindful, and I'll talk about how you can find us, but even without Safe Telecom or KosherOS, but anything that someone could do to pull back a little bit during the holidays and to keep that going throughout the year is so important, so special. And the dividends of that pays for your own personal life. We don't have to even go past the personal level, but for family and for acquaintances and for communities. And really ultimately for the world, that mindfulness, that consciousness, the intentional interaction with tech. When you use it, when you don't use it, it's not a mindless thing. I think I saw recently Oxford Word of the Year, I believe, was brain rot. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's happening. It's a real thing. So I think that's so important at this time of year to focus on. And we have the opportunity. We have our family. We have our loved ones. Let's spend time with them and let's really enjoy them and have meaningful moments with them. For Safe Telecom, for KosherOS, the best way to see what we're doing is KosherOS.com. That's kosheroperating-system.com. We have the website is focused more on the kosher products, but there's a contact form on the website. There's also info@safetelecom.net. We're always open to hear any partnership opportunities, any communities, any schools. And you can see the list of schools on our website that we work with. Like I said, where we have a certain flexibility built into the system to be able to work with lots of people. We're mission-driven, impact-based company. We want to help people help themselves, help their communities. I post extensively on LinkedIn under my name. That's a way of getting out to different communities. I find it extremely powerful tool. And there's a really great like-minded community out there of people who are looking to make a difference. So those are always the best ways to reach us. I welcome anyone who has questions, opportunities, anything. I love what I do. I love to share it with people. Sometimes I talk too much about it, but that's part of what it is. That's what we're here for.
That was Eli Samuel, founder and creator of KosherOS and Safe Telecom. We had the great opportunity to have him, and if you want to, make sure to check out his website and products. They will be in the description of this podcast. Thank you for listening to Moving Offline. We have a few more interviews lined up. I don't know if I'll be able to release them by the end of the year, but if I do, just stay tuned to the feed. I'm really excited about some of them, and I think you will too. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast and everything I do. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.